His life is inextricably linked to the Mafia, which he exposed and denounced more than 10 years ago in his book Gomorrah. Since then, Italian author Roberto Saviano has lived in hiding, dodging death threats. His book so incensed the Mafia, but that hasn't stopped him in his relentless research and writing into international crime, the drugs, the money, the violence that fuels them. Well, I'm with Roberto Saviano at the Italiissimo Festival in Paris. Many thanks for being with me on The Global Conversation.
Thank you.
Now, you shot to fame with your book, Gomorrah. That was 10 years ago. I imagine 10 years in the world of the Mafia is a very long time. Can you give me some of the main ways the Gomorrah group has changed?
The greatest change in the Gomorrah is related to the generations. The leaders today are delegating to very young people who control the territory. It's as if they're closed off, in a sort of aristocratic isolation. They give power to kids who are 15 to 20 years old. They're not baby gangs, they're real mafiosi with rules, incredible military violence and wages managing the drug trafficking. The major revolution is essentially in terms of their age, and also because 20-year-olds are willing to die more easily.
Anche perché un ragazzo di 20 anni è disposto a morire più facilmente.
And the judiciary has actually described these groups as like urban terrorists. Do they have links, do they have any resemblance to the terrorists we hear of, to the jihadis who've joined groups like the Islamic State?
No, there are no structural links. It's not that they speak with jihadi groups. But there are cultural links. Today, a young Neapolitan, Mexican or South African is very similar to those in North Africa who decide to join ISIL. They certainly have one thing in common. Only those who are prepared to die, trying to get rich, or like jihadists to leave a mark, make a difference.
Per arricchirsi, per lasciare il segno, può fare la differenza.
Today, according to the Mafia, you don't stand out by living differently, but by dying differently. For example, the kids I've studied in my country lately, they write on Facebook that they will never reach 25 years of age, not even 20. A 30-year-old is considered a failure, someone who's not made it in life.
Un trentenne è visto come uno sfigato che non ce l'ha fatta.
You describe this kind of scenario in your new book, The Parenze dei Bambini, and it also seems to be fueled by a sense of hopelessness. These youths don't really have opportunities. There's massive urban decay in these centres, in Naples particularly. Is Naples symbolic of so many other cities around the world for you?
Sì, certo.
Yes, absolutely.
Città del Messico,
Mexico City, Lagos, Rio de Janeiro, the suburbs of Paris and Barcelona. They're all a symbol of this story.
Sono tutti luoghi simbolo di queste storie.
Naples and Italy are merely capable of narrating this story and voicing what is happening. Here in France, I can see the entire debate is only about the effects. They don't look at the causes. The suburbs of Paris are full of illegal money, and yet they only talk about the effects of the dealer or the immigrant.
Eppure tutti parlano solo dell'effetto dello spacciatore o dell'immigrato.
But this dealer and immigrant have money and cocaine that are given to them by the French mafia, the mafia from Marseille and Corsica. Money laundering is done by the French financial system. All this money ends up in Luxembourg. The difference between us in Naples and the rest of Europe is that we talk about it. The rest of Europe has a hard time admitting to these stories.
Il resto d'Europa ha fatica a riconoscere queste storie.
Well, in Europe, though, if we focus on there, is there a certain amount of hypocrisy then? Because you're saying you talk about it in Italy, but European leaders are not talking about it. They're willfully choosing not to?
Absolutely, but it's more than a choice. There's also an element of ignorance. The most extraordinary thing in the world is to listen to the political debates in France. There's not one presidential candidate who knows about these phenomena. Those who talk about immigration don't actually ask where the money that's going to the criminal suburbs comes from, where the cocaine comes from, how money laundering functions in Paris, who is buying apartments. The candidates don't even know. Only a part of the police service is aware of it, as well as a few specialised journalists, and the rest of the country is looking elsewhere.
Okay, well, if they're turning a blind eye, is it because there is a certain need for this illegal money in the economy? You described the amounts of money that are flowing through the economy, the illegal money that's laundered into the European economy, as absolutely astronomical. If we're in times of economic hardship, stagnation, withdrawing that money could actually bring about a collapse that these leaders might not desire.
Yes, of course. One of the reasons is, if you put in place rules against money laundering, you'll also be blocking money, not only from drug trafficking, but also from the Middle East, money from tax evasion. If you introduce legislation to make it mafia-proof, you'll close the system to other capital that's needed in the economy. From this perspective, Europe has given up trying to control its capital, even clean money. Brexit is one of the examples of this. It's fed off a desire to make Great Britain an offshore haven.
Completamente alimentata dalla volontà di rendere l'Inghilterra un'isola offshore.
Okay, so if the UK is going to become an offshore haven, or has been previously, how do you see Brexit playing into that then? How do you see the future for the United Kingdom when it comes to this kind of illegal money laundering, this illegal centre of activity?
Transparency groups have shown this with irrefutable data. The UK is already the most, without doubt, the most corrupt country in the world, not in terms of politics or police, but in terms of money laundering. No English person feels that they're in the most corrupt country in the world because they cannot pay off policemen or easily corrupt politicians. But they don't know that their financial system is totally corrupt.
Il suo sistema finanziario è assolutamente corrotto. In che senso dico corrotto?
What do I mean by corruption? I mean that there's no control of the flow of money, not necessarily into London, but into Gibraltar, Malta and Jersey. These are all the doors through which Great Britain brings money in without any control.
La Gran Bretagna fa entrare denaro senza controllo.
Panama used to be the money laundering capital. Now it's London. Panama got its revenge with the Panama Papers. They clearly released names to take revenge against London.
Sono chiaramente una vendetta far uscire i nomi per vendicarsi di un concorrente che è diventato Londra.
A new report from Europol has exposed how these international criminal groups, the Mafia, have fully embraced now technology. And that's allowing them to dig in deeper and hide more from authorities. Is it going to become practically impossible to trace and catch these groups?
If there were real laws against money laundering, it would be easy. Today, it's much easier to track money than before because we're no longer dealing in banknotes. We have electronic transactions that leave traces on the web. The problem is that there are plenty of territories where you can make these transactions and make them disappear. Each European state has one. Spain has Andorra, Germany has Liechtenstein, France has Luxembourg, and everyone has Switzerland.
La Francia e Lussemburgo, tutti hanno la Svizzera.
It's really easy to hide money in Europe. In the past, banks were frightened to take mafia money. That was in the 80s, 90s. Now they search out mafia money because they lack cash flow and because the economic crisis has put the banking system on its knees. So the bank's defense systems have been completely lowered, and the mafia can enter. It is a relatively new phenomenon. The mafia used to have trouble laundering money in European banks. They used offshore banks in South America and Asia, but now they have totally penetrated the legal economy.
These are very powerful accusations that you're making. Are you receiving any backlash politically from what you're saying, or are you just being ignored?
I get comments every day. I'm never welcome in the countries I visit because I'm always told, this is an Italian problem, talk about your own country. I'm accused of exaggerating, of inventing or repeating what's already known.
L'accusa solita è quella o di esagerare o di inventare o di ripetere quello che si sa. Questo è il cortocircuito.
Everything that we've talked about today is not hidden, it's simply not observed. That's the paradox. These days, more than ever, all the attention is focused on terrorism, so mafia money and money laundering are absolutely free to flow where they want.
È liberissimo di scorrere dove vuole.
Well, reports show that the European criminal world is really exploiting the refugee crisis, and apparently people smuggling is becoming one of the most profitable crimes at the moment. Is that something you're seeing?
All the boats that are crossing the Mediterranean are managed by the cartels, but not by the Italian cartels like everyone thinks. The Mafia doesn't have a say in this. They're Turkish, Libyan and Lebanese groups that have always invested in people smuggling, and Europe has not the faintest idea of this dynamic.
L'Europa non ha la benché minima conoscenza di queste dinamiche.
The cartels that manage the arrivals of the Syrians in Europe are all Turkish mafia, and it's the same mafia that manages heroin from Afghanistan. ISIL, the caliphate, for example, has three primary sources of profit, all from criminal activity: racketeering, petrol smuggling and art smuggling. The fourth is drugs, Captagon, which is a methamphetamine and marijuana that ISIL cultivates in Albania.
Il Captagon, che è una metanfetamina, o la marijuana che ISIS coltiva in Albania.
We choose not to have a deeper understanding of the situation and retain a superficial reading of it, that there's a clash of civilizations, when in fact we're dealing with a clash between criminal groups.
Your pursuit of your work has put your own life at risk. You seem to be willing to die for your work. Is there any going back for you, or is this going to remain an almost obsession of your life when you give up the things that most people would have at your age? Family, home, friends?
Yes, it's possible. What I should be doing, I'm not doing. I should disappear. I should stop doing interviews, writing books, stop doing my job.
Dovrei sparire. Smettere di fare interviste, smettere di fare libri, smettere di fare il mio lavoro.
But two things are stopping me. One is ambition, the ability that my words still have an impact on reality. Then there is the question of vengeance, of revenge, to carry on doing this even though the Mafia makes my life impossible. I wouldn't suggest my decisions to anyone else because I could have done this more cautiously. I wouldn't do it again like this. I'd do it with more care, more discipline. Instead, I realized I went too fast and I crashed into a wall.
Invece ho accelerato moltissimo, mi sono reso conto, e quindi mi sono andato a sbattere.
When you wrote Gomorrah, you were very much on the ground. You were speaking to people, you were experiencing what was happening, and now your work has had to change, obviously quite drastically. You can no longer do that. In terms of an author, how do you see yourself evolving?
When I was young, I had a hard time meeting magistrates or having access to tapped conversations. Now they're sent directly to me. Now everyone wants to talk to me about the investigations. It's incredible how everything has changed. For example, I couldn't have travelled on a train as a free man, but recently I was on an Italian train with my bodyguard. It made a real impression on me. It was 10 years since I'd taken a train. Freedom is magical, and like everything, you appreciate it when you've lost it. It's like the people you love, like oxygen. It's the same with freedom. When I lost it, I understood what freedom was.
ho capito dannazione cos'è.
I understood how the sick and imprisoned people feel, those who are not free to walk or make choices. Every time I can enjoy a moment of freedom, it's golden.
Ogni volta che posso prendermi un momento di libertà, per me è oro davvero.
Roberto Saviano, many thanks for being with us on the program.
Thank you so much. Grazie. Ciao, grazie.